So today on our Scottish Adoption and Fostering podcast, we're really delighted to have Nell Carpenter with us, who is an adoptive mum of two girls that I'm hoping she will be able to talk to us a little bit about. And one of the main reasons that we're really delighted to have her here today is because she has written a book, Someday This Could Be Ordinary, Our Adoption Journey, which is all about her experience of being kind of thrust into the world of parenting siblings. And it's something that I really enjoyed reading and think it'll be a book that many people who listen might like to have a read of. So, Nell, thanks so much. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really, really pleased to be here. It sounds really funny when it's like, oh, an adoptive mum, and oh, she wrote a book. I still think, did I really write that? Is this me in this situation? Yeah, no, I'm really happy to be here to chat about it. It feels like a lifetime ago,
Yeah.
although it was only a few years ago.
It'd be really helpful if you could maybe tell us just a little bit about your adoption story, not in loads of detail, but just a little bit about how it started and then maybe what motivated you to write the book.
I wanted to be a mum. That was a big part of,
Yeah.
that it was always part of the journey. And at the time of thinking about that, the job that I worked in, I was working with a lot of families that were struggling at that point, and it was all about trying to keep the families together. And there was a lot of kids going into care. So I suppose I was open to, oh wow, there's quite a lot of kids that need
Yeah.
parents. So that kind of steered me into having a conversation of, maybe we should think about adoption. That might be a route for us. Yeah, and I suppose to begin with, it was in my head, and I don't know if this is the same for everyone. "Oh, we'll adopt a baby."
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't really work like that. There wasn't really this newborn baby that was kind of on the list to. I suppose that was a bit of a shocker.
It's really
So
interesting to me you saying that as well, because like you mentioned, you did have kind of professional experience in the
mhm.
area and knew the kind of could see some of the journeys these young people had go on, but I still think society assumes adoption is adoption of babies.
Yeah, yeah, and I was there. I was,
Yeah,
guilty. I was. It's not until you then get access to Linkmaker, I realized, wow, there are lots and lots of children. And I remember at the prep group that we went to before you start the process, one of the social worker had said, used a term that, oh, any child kind of over the age of 4 sometimes can be termed unadoptable because
yeah,
most people want a child younger. And that just really hit me hard. I thought, oh my God, they're only 4.
so
What does this
young.
mean for, yeah, so, and I wonder, I mean, I'm not sure, but I wonder if that then influenced what then happened next, because I went from, oh, we'll have a baby and it'll be lovely, to we're now looking at a 3-year-old plus her 8-year-old sister, which
Quite a
never
different.
ever was the plan, that I would be adopting an 8-year-old, but or siblings. In my head, I naively was like, oh, we'll get a baby and then they will grow for a few years and then we'll get another one.
Yeah,
And it just doesn't work that way. So yeah, I suppose it's not until you're in it that you're like, oh right, so this is how it works.
and what made you think, so you kind of said you that was your starting point, and then you found yourself with two girls.
Yeah. So it wasn't as easy. So there was a few other profiles where we were kind of like, oh, we're interested. I found that part really tough in the process,
Yeah,
actually. It's and I kind of, when my friends ask me to describe it, the only way to kind of describe it is like, well, when you're going online dating and you're
yeah,
just swiping through profiles, it's the exact same concept,
yeah,
like, which feels really, really bizarre that you're
absolutely.
getting to swipe through all of these profiles. That was just really strange concept to get your head around.
Absolutely. And I suppose just for some people, in case they're not sure what Linkmaker is, it's this online digital platform, isn't it? So
Yeah.
in Scotland, all children who have a plan for adoption, that being their kind of permanence plan there, mandated to have a profile on this system, and it can have photos, it can have videos, but also
Mhm.
you as an adopter, prospective adopter, you're up on there as well, aren't you? So
Yeah,
there's,
yeah.
yeah,
So then you're also getting like, are we getting swiped?
yeah,
Like, what we wrote, are we good enough?
yeah,
You're kind of the receiving end as well. So you get onto that, and at first we were just there was so many sibling groups. I think that also struck me. I
yeah,
could not believe how many sibling groups were on there together. And of course, it's absolutely, yeah, why would we want to separate them? I love that
absolutely.
idea of, oh, they'd be coming together and they already love each other or they're used to each other. I think that kind of grabbed, I thought, this kind of concept of maybe have one and then another. Actually, isn't it lovely that they're related and they
Yeah,
have something together and they can keep that? So that kind of shifted in our thinking of, okay, let's look at that. And then all of a sudden, having to explain that to your friends and family. Oh, by the way, we're not adopting a baby. We're adopting these two ready-made personalities
yeah,
who come with lots of stuff, and
yeah,
they're 3 and 8. That's really hard for your friends and family to get their head around. Wow.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's kind of hard for you as well because you know, especially with a slightly older child, I think people are anxious about things that they've missed out on, those kind of
Mhm.
stages. And once you've been through the preparation process and you've thought carefully about it, I suppose you know that actually you're planning the next stages and you're kind of going on that
Mhm.
family journey together. But for the people around you who maybe haven't had that support and information, it must seem really stark.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot with Rosie, because she was 8, you could definitely see there was delays and you could see there was milestones she'd missed out on. So,
Yeah.
for what you would maybe expect an 8-year-old to be behaving like, sometimes that was looking more like a 4 or a 5-year-old. And I really struggled to get my head around that
Yeah.
of, right, stop looking at Rosie like she's 8. You
Yeah,
have to kind of look at her like take into account the things she's missed and respond like you would
yeah,
to someone that's younger.
much younger.
That blows your mind. You're like,
Yeah,
that's really easy to read in a book. And you think, I could absolutely do that.
yeah.
Emotionally, when you're just like, oh my goodness, we're in public and we're in front of everyone and this is happening, it can kind
It's
of get the better of you. Like,
so much harder. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we were talking just before we came on about your kind of professional background and the
mhm,
training you'd had, and you'd obviously offered lots of support to families who are struggling at times. And I think
yeah,
then you kind of come in with maybe some, you've got all these extra strategies, but
yeah.
it's complicated when to then apply them in a personal context, isn't it?
Yeah, when all the emotions are taken over, like sometimes I look back and I think, you should go back and say sorry to those families because you're like, we're not taking into account the emotion that comes with that. And when you're coming in at a very, outsider level, that's really easy.
Yeah.
But when I've got all these competing things in your head, like, oh, I want them to love me. I want them to bond with me. I want to do well. And yeah, I want people to think I'm doing well. And sometimes you're just like, I have not done this very well. I've
This could
not been very good here and I need to get better.
Do you know, so that's one thing that really struck me when I was kind of going through your book and pulling bits out, is how, on the one hand, you were so aware of how the children were struggling and the things I did and showed these amazing insights, but also the power of kind of your inner voice saying, you've let them down today, this hasn't been good enough. And to me, that just struck me as how hard it is for an adoptive parent when you kind of going to bed at night after having a really exhausting day, and then on top of it all, you're also beating yourself up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was actually even more exhausting when you're
Yeah,
then getting overthinking everything. I mean, it is the hardest thing to do. To this day, nothing will be harder than the first year of
yeah,
adopting the girls. Now, 4 years later, I'm able to say, "Oh, you've nailed that, Nell. You're
yeah,
through the other side. Like you
yeah.
do
Well done,
respond
me.
much
Yeah,
better." But it was so hard. Like I cannot. tell you the amount of times I had to just go and hide in a space to, because I just felt so sad. I was like, this is so hard. And you're trying so hard. I suppose a big thing as well that I really struggled with was, should I be expected to love them immediately and have
Yeah.
this bond? And I was just like, I don't know them well enough yet. Yes, I've been to all the meetings and I've read through the 48-page report and I've met with every professional involved, and we couldn't have been given any more information. But it's just so different when you're trying to establish yourself as a mum, which I'd never been.
Yeah.
And also they had a lot of complex behaviors that I was just like, wow, it's me that's getting the brunt of this. And
Yeah.
that's really hard because you're not getting much back in return to begin with.
And
So that
you
that
want to
was,
really love them, you want them to really
yeah,
love you, but
yeah,
actually somewhere in the middle, they're having a really difficult time because you're ultimately a stranger
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
you're
like how
having a
do you
really
expect
difficult
them
time.
to
Yeah.
be, and yeah, and that was hard as well. But then you get these lovely little glimmers where I remember I was getting Annie ready for nursery, and I was just putting her boots on, and we were going about her. Normally, it's a nightmare to get her in the car and go through the whole, you have to get in the car seat, and she wanted to fight against everything. But this morning, she just looked up and she had this little Minnie Mouse jacket, and I was putting it on, and I was thinking, you are the most cutest thing in the world. And she just turned and she said, thank you for being my mummy. And
Um,
I was like, I just was like, this is worth it.
yeah.
Like she's starting to feel like you're now my mummy. You're doing all the things. And that's really hard because you're taking on this role and you're doing all the things. And you're like, when's it going to come? When's that? It's almost like my advice would be to anyone that's going through it, you don't have to force it because it
Yeah.
absolutely comes, but you're so desperate for it. I was desperate for it. And I think
Yeah.
probably a lot of people in the process will be desperate for that attachment and that bond
Yeah.
that you really strive. That's but it absolutely comes, and it'll come at the right time. There is no timeline on it, I would say. Every week, every day, every month, every year, it gets better and
Oh,
better and
yeah.
better. But it's still really hard.
It's still
Like,
hard. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I suppose I think we probably do hear that from some of our families at times saying, when will it feel different? I think
Hmm.
often, realistically, some families voice that in retrospect. They've maybe sometimes felt too anxious at the time. They've maybe within their, if they're in a couple, they maybe within their couple have kind of said to each other, is this going to get easier or will this love feel more natural? And
Yeah.
often, I think we hear about it afterwards
Hmm.
when it's there and they say, oh gosh, actually that beginning bit was really quite hard going. And the time is different for everyone,
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely.
And I was just wondering, one of the other things you kind of write about is you obviously had this lovely kind of support network around you that kind of comes across in the book. But did you feel that you also needed to show them that you were in and everything was going well? Did you kind of put your pressure on yourself for that as well?
Yeah, because you talk about that you've been waiting for such a long time, and you're talking about how this is going to look and this is going to be wonderful, and you want to present to the world that it's
Yeah,
wonderful. And probably the only person that I could really honestly have the conversation with was my mum and my best friend. And my mum, I remember my mum just saying, but some new mums come home from the hospital and they really struggle. Like she's kind of in her way trying to kind of make me feel better
yeah,
as well. Yeah, or I found it much easier to speak to my best friend Davina as well because she'd known me for such a long time. So she'd
yeah,
known all the highs and all the lows, and I could just be really honest. She was always able to be like, "Oh, but you'll get through it though." There was
yeah,
never any doubt of, oh yeah, but you'll get to the other side. So those
yeah,
people are really important in the process because there's times where it feels really hard and you do think, what have I done? And for
yeah,
me, it came from, am I good enough? Am I going to be good enough to give them what they deserve?
yeah. I
So
mean,
it's
that's what
this,
really stood out to me in the book. There's lots of these sentences that I found in a way kind of quite hard to read because they were so powerful around, I did this, I'm not proud of that. You talk about an incident and then you describe in detail how it must have felt for Annie, for Rosie, and then you kind of giving yourself this pep talk, I will be better, I need to be better for them. And the weight of the responsibility that came across, I found, really eye-opening, I suppose.
yeah. And that's a lot. I get a lot of feedback when people have read the book to, oh, you're really hard on yourself. I think probably every parent, whether you're an adoptive parent or a birth parent, takes on that same responsibility in terms of the role of what they want her. And I remember my mum saying, because you're so hard on yourself and you want it to be better, that's good enough.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of, and I'm like, and that's quite powerful as well to be like, what? You're always striving for it to be better, and they can see that.
yeah.
And also this idea of you don't have to be perfect. Like 4 years later, I'm
Absolutely.
now a bit like, right, Nell, you don't have to be perfect. And it's funny because they get to really know you. So they will know when you're in more of a mood or,
Yeah.
like Rosie will now be if I've been a bit moody, she'll now be like, is it your time of month? Like, and then we have a laugh about it.
Yeah,
Because there's just lots of things now where we don't know each other, and you need
yeah,
to really invest and get to know each other, and them to get to know you. And that's harder because well, for Rosie, there was 8 years of
yeah,
not only 8 years of not knowing her, but 8 years of where life was hard for her,
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
it's hard to. And I thought, oh, you've read all about trauma, you've talked about it, you've worked, you think you're trauma informed in your practice, and it's really difficult when in reality when you're caring for a new child who you don't know,
yeah,
and they've come with a whole host of different little complex behaviors because of their trauma. And that's probably the most difficult part to navigate, and then to take a step back to understand, because sometimes like you can take it personal, like, oh, why is she doing
yeah,
that?
yeah.
She's not doing that to annoy you, Nell. She can't help herself.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like this is not on her, this is on you to then respond to be
yeah.
helpful. And that's hard. That is, I still every day need to work on that.
It's really difficult. And
Yeah.
again, we were talking just before, but you were saying, particularly for Rosie coming at 8, there's a whole history there, and there's a whole host of memories, and she has a clear relationship of forms with her birth mother. And I just wondered if you talk about it in the book, and you talk about how your feelings change over time. So at first you kind of talk about how it can feel really complicated. You're not sure what your feelings are, this idea of these kind of letters coming in the post,
Hmm.
and then there's a point where you write a letter yourself to Michelle, Rosie's birth mother, and the kind of power of the letter you receive back and how moved you are. And it sounds like you've kind of really come on a journey with that.
Yeah, and that's the part in the process before you do this I didn't really think too much of, but
Yeah,
it's probably the most important part. And now when I look how settled the kids are, it's
yeah,
because there is a continued narrative where they can ask questions. They openly talk about Michelle. I will openly talk about Michelle because she will always be their birth mum.
yeah,
I mean, that's a journey. I've had to go on to be like, oh, am I okay with this now? Like, because you
yeah,
kind of have to put your game face on and almost like dig deep to be like, because of course you want to be like, I want to be the center of your world,
yeah, of course.
I'm your
Yeah,
mum. But Michelle doesn't go anywhere, and there has been a real journey before we even adopted the children. We got to meet with Michelle,
yeah,
and that was really, really important. And I honestly would say to anyone going through the process, if that opportunity comes up, take it.
yeah,
Because, you get that 48-page report and it's got everything that's happened in their life as much as the social worker knows. And it can be really hard reading. And then you just meet this young woman who is actually really nice. If you met her in the street or spoke to her in the shop, she's really likable. She was interesting. She showed warmth. It's not a monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that really important in terms of the conversation we were able to have, which then led to more of a, because in terms of the process, it can get complicated when you go through in terms of, you know, the adoption order getting granted, and should we go to court, and our process, I mean, if anyone reads the book, you'll see it was a lengthy process, but it got to the point where Michelle probably felt quite attacked by social work, and not that she was, but I can imagine that's how she felt at the time. To which then I just wrote a letter to say, we're basically on the same page. What you
Yeah.
want for Rosie and Annie is you want them to be safe, and you want them to be loved, and you want them to have opportunities. That's what I want to do as well. But she also wanted reassurance that the door's not closed.
Yeah.
You're not erased. You never will be.
Yeah.
Because as much as there was really tough times, Rosie still tells stories of when there were good times. You know,
Yeah.
and that's really important. That is her story. So she should be able to discuss that. And that was really helpful. I think that's been really helpful for all of us when I think of all of our journey in terms of mine's, Michelle's, Rosie's, because everyone knows their place and is probably
Yeah.
feels valued in terms of where they are. And now they get their letters, 2 letters a year. We write, we send photos. They get to write their letter, and I send it more detailed. She sends one back, and that brings a real calmness,
Yeah.
because Rosie knows probably better than anyone how much of a struggle life was for Michelle,
Yeah.
because she lived through it. So every time she gets a letter, it almost rests her soul of, okay, she's doing okay, because she
Yeah.
wrote and she gave some photos, and you know that really works. And then you have Michelle, who's really grateful to receive, oh, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you deserve to have all this information. That's a tough journey to get your head around, because you kind of fluctuate. The system's not easy to navigate as well, and then you get safeguarders coming to the house, and then someone else, and at that point all you want to do is be like, just stop this.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Leave me
this is
alone.
done.
Let me
Leave us
get on with
alone.
it.
Let them
Yeah.
settle. So I suppose now you find your own way, and
Yeah.
now we can do that. We've been doing that, and it's been working well.
And again, I was saying to you before, but when I read it, I was kind of asking, I said, oh, it almost felt to me like a, because it's so detailed and it kind of follows this path. And I was like, oh, I wondered if it had started life as a diary.
Yeah. So it absolutely, that is the only reason. I mean, I'm not very good at English. Would never class myself as someone that could write a book. So it started off as a diary. Purely, I was just writing little notes at the end of the night to remind me what had happened that day. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until a few weeks later I went back, and even within a space of a few weeks, I was like, oh, well, it's a wee bit better, like, because this has happened or that's
Yeah.
happened, or and then it encouraged me to then keep a track of the funny things,
Yeah.
because it can be really tough when you're just like, oh, that was really bad. But there are a lot of funny things that come up that you have to laugh at,
Yeah.
and in amongst all of the chaos that you're getting used to. And I find that really helpful in terms of, right, okay, it's not all terrible because this happened. Or there was even sometimes where I was like, oh, you've done that quite well, like do that again, like as a
Yeah.
reminder of like what worked.
Yeah.
So it was a journal of just random notes, to which I then read through, and I thought, I really wish someone had wrote this in detail and I had read it before I'd
Yeah.
adopted the girls, because I think it would have just made me feel a bit like, okay, you're not the only person in the world that's struggling,
Yeah.
and it's okay and it can be expected, but there's also so many positives amongst the
Yeah.
things that are really difficult. Yeah, so I was like, I think I'm just going to send this to a few publishers and see if they want it, and yeah, like that's how it worked out.
Yeah. But I think it is that thing, isn't it, of being able to look back. You had this learning, as you're saying before, you're kind of continuing on that journey. There's still things that come up. You kind of, as a parent, every parent, whatever route
Yeah.
to parenthood, it's one big learning journey, whatever age your children are, as
Yeah.
adults, whatever it is. Um, but it's really nice to be able to say, you're not alone. This was my experience. Other people might have different experiences, but
Mhm.
this is my experience. And for me, that's really the value of the book. And I found it particularly helpful kind of coming in with that, I suppose, brutal honesty at times that I do worry some families find hard to articulate, or worry that, especially before the adoption order's been granted, they maybe worry, like, will this mean someone will make a decision about this child that I am committed to, but I'm finding it really hard. And anything that can normalize some of those difficult feelings, I feel, is so important.
Yeah. Because I think it's so easy to, if you feel ashamed, because you, like in my head, I should have been coping better. I should have been doing better, all these should statements.
Yeah,
And actually, no, don't hide that. That's okay. That's okay that you felt that way, Nell. That's okay that you're only human. Yeah, I think too often maybe we just deal with things in a lonely
yeah,
space when it's really difficult. I mean, I know from the book you'll be able to see that a lot of my really hard moments I spent alone in the bathroom floor crying
yeah,
because I was like, this is awful. But I mean, I can't remember the last time I was on the bathroom floor, so that's brilliant.
yeah,
We're through to the other side. But yeah, I just think it's so important that people know, yes, it's not easy. And I mean, it's all that cliche, oh, but it's so worth it. But it actually really, really is. It
yeah,
really is worth it. And it's so, as much as oh, Nell, you can be really hard on yourself. It's so important to have that self-reflection
yeah.
on what you can do, because it's so powerful and the change that you can create and how they feel and then how they behave, because you can be more of a stabilizing force.
Absolutely.
Um,
It's a dynamic, isn't it? It's not an
yeah,
individual moment. I think you write really well about how children are, their emotions are coming out in different ways, how that can be very triggering for a parent,
yeah,
how it can really kind of push your buttons and push you to your limits, but also the only bit of control you have is your response.
yeah. And that's the hardest bit to
I
master.
know. And if
Yeah.
anyone ever fully masters that, love to meet them.
Me too. I would love if you invite them onto your podcast. Can I come along as a guest to also understand how to get to that point?
Yeah.
Oh,
And you were saying that people have received it really warmly. You've had lots of kind of conversations about the book, and people seem to relate to it. Has that been
yeah.
helpful for you as well?
And do you know what? That actually has been so helpful in more ways than I even imagined. Because there's lots of things in the book that, friends or family read and they were like, oh my God, I didn't realize. Or the fact that so many people have I mean, there's been even people who aren't parents have like came to speak to me to say, oh, I've been through some really hard times where I've been really lonely. And I
Yeah,
read your book, and I'm not a parent, but I really related, because I speak a lot about the when I first adopted the girls, it does feel really lonely. Your
yeah,
life kind of comes smaller, and it has to for them. But that's really hard when you're used to being a social butterfly and you go
yeah,
out and you do this and you do that. And now, oh, I'm not seeing these people, and now I need to be committed to this tiny process before it needs to be smaller before it gets bigger. So I did find that part really lonely. So even people that weren't parents were able to say, "Oh, I really related to when I felt lonely,"
right.
or birth parents are able to say, "Oh God, I'm so just reading your book made me feel like less of a monster when I go nuts at the children."
Yeah,
And I'm like, even to hear other people say, "Oh, it feels comfortable that we can have this chat," when I can admit everything
yeah,
you've wrote in there, I've kind of experienced
yeah,
almost half of it, and it's
yeah,
kind of brings it to light to say it's okay. We're all human, and
absolutely. Yeah.
we don't need to be perfect. We just need to be working at it every day.
And I suppose most people come to parenthood again in whatever form with kind of fantasies and hopes, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think there's some really funny little examples, like you talk about, the excitement of taking the girls to Murrayfield and
Hmm.
oh, I know what I do in this situation. And you probably had years of picturing, I'll bring my child and we'll have like, we'll be there with my friends. And then actually the experience is I don't really see my friends at all. It's really boring for them. This
Yeah.
isn't a good day. And so I suppose that's a little example, but it's that wider thing, isn't it? Of this is not quite how I thought it might be.
Yeah, yeah. Or they're going to really like rugby and sports the way I do. This will be
Yeah,
brilliant. And actually, Rosie really loves dancing and drama, and
yeah.
we've had to go down that route. And that's where I was so like, oh, please, please be into rugby. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just the small things like that that you're like, oh, I thought we'd do this together.
yeah, yeah.
Then you find yourself at the dance competitions all weekend and you're not watching the rugby.
YouTubing how to do hair.
Yeah.
But I do think it is that how do you prepare yourself for something that is almost unpreparable for?
Yeah, that is the perfect way to describe it. I mean, I listened to every podcast, I read every book that was recommended. I honestly, I thought you're so prepared, Nell. There's nothing else that you can do. And then boom, there's this 3-year-old and this 8-year-old who are chaos, and you're like, oh, rabbit in the headlights, and you just have to go with it. I don't think there is an answer, or it's just you get to the other side. It's given
Yeah.
it time, and you get to know each other and they get to know you, and the love grows. It's a journey where you learn every day, and we're still all learning
Yeah.
every day. The humor, we're really good at putting humor into it as well, and that's really nice. Rosie's now 12, so she now started to copy that,
Uh-huh.
which I just think is really, really nice as well. She's able to not take things so seriously now, and we can kind of
Yeah.
laugh it off as well, which always helps. Like,
Yes.
okay, let's laugh at the funny things, and then let's deal with the serious things that have come up there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which was hard to do to begin with, because you're at this stress level that I've never been at before. I'm on autopilot. Wow, when am I going to relax?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting you saying you'd kind of read everything and you'd listened to everything. And I suppose that sense of I still wasn't prepared, but you could see that, well, for me as an outsider reading it, it obviously was doing something even in your kind of high arousal state, because then even if it's that you're holding yourself to this kind of higher account, you're then able to step back and say, hang on, I've got something in here. I know this is a trauma response. I know.
yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really fair point. You're absolutely right. In the moment, it doesn't feel like that because you're just
No.
like, what? But absolutely, it is there. So
So,
yeah, I would, every podcast, every book, read them.
yeah,
Something will stick in.
again. But don't
Um,
be shocked when it doesn't feel perfect.
do not, yeah, don't expect to be perfect and expect it to be hard. But then after the hard bits, it's lovely. There's so many lovely bits. Like, so I mean, they might not be into rugby, but they'll come to rugby to watch my games. And we got in the car after a game, and Annie was like, Mum, you're so cool because you're so good at rugby. I'm going to be just like you. I mean, we won that game, and I got player of the match. And the only thing I was bothered about that day was Annie thinks I'm really cool.
Oh,
That has been the
yeah,
highlight of the day.
yeah,
Um, so there's loads of little things where you're like,
yeah,
yeah, we're all so different, and you'll do your judo and you'll do your dancing and your acting, and I'll play rugby, and we'll all be very different, but we've all accept each other, and you gel into this little, like the book's called Someday This Could Be Ordinary.
yeah,
And because all I was doing was striving for what should be ordinary, what is everyone else. Actually, there is no ordinary, and I
yeah,
don't want to be ordinary, and I don't want them to be ordinary.
yeah,
You shout out your story. Let people know that you're adopted. That's your story. Don't shy away from it. Don't be ashamed.
yeah,
You've got 2 mums. Let
yeah,
the world know. Like,
yeah,
you use your voice and be proud of who you are and what your story is as well. And I think that's really important, that they feel their story matters.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, on that note, I don't think there's anything else we could possibly say. It's been so lovely to hear from you. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us. I think probably thank you on behalf of so many families for being open and sharing your story. And I know a lot of people already have felt the benefit of reading your book, and hopefully this will inspire some more people to do so as well. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
I'm glad. And for anybody who's listening who wants to know more about the book, we will put some details for it in the main page. So thank you so much, Nell. It's been really, really, really lovely to have you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Polly.